Let's set up a brand new Next.js 15 application, embed a Sanity Studio from a brand new Sanity project, and set up live by default data fetching along with visual editing, which allows you to look at drafts and interact with them, preview them in real time. This guide is kept regularly updated. So if you see the code snippets in the guide are a little bit out of step with this video, prefer the versions in the guide because they'll be the most accurate and up to date. So let's dive in and get started. Let's run the first command here, which is create next app, which will install a brand new Next.js 15 application. We can then enter that directory. And run npm run dev. And now when we open localhost 3000, we'll see the blank screen that comes with any brand new Next.js application. Now, if we open up the files of this project, let's go and make a few changes to some of these files just to remove the boilerplate that this new template comes with. So first, I'm just going to replace everything on this homepage route here with just the text, replace me with Sanity content. I'm also going to get rid of a lot of the Tailwind styles that come pre-configured and just reset those back to the defaults. Now we'll make one more change to the next config file, which allows us to use remote images from the Sanity CDN in the Next.js image component. Let's close all of these files, close the sidebar, and bring up the terminal. I'll leave that process still running and open up a new terminal. And so inside of this same Next.js application, I'm going to run this other command that you'll find in the guide there, which is going to run npx sanity at latest init. It's going to create a new project and a new dataset name. If you haven't already created a Sanity account or you're not logged into the Sanity CLI, you'll get prompted to do so now. And now we can follow the prompts to just select all the defaults. We do want to add Sanity project files here. We do want to use TypeScript. We do want to embed the Sanity Studio. We'll put that at /studio. We'll choose the blog schema types to begin with, and we'll write all of the details that we need to an env local file. You can see that in the terminal, my dependencies have installed fine. But if you do have any issues, go to the React 19 help guide, and it should contain some information about how to debug any issues that you might have while installing dependencies between Sanity, Next.js 15, and React 19. Now we can go to /studio in our local development environment. Log in with the same login provider that you used when you were in the terminal. You can now create posts, categories, and authors. And it's best here to go and write a new post. Give it a slug and press publish. You could publish a few posts, which will help you debug the front end. If we close the terminal now, we'll see that in our project, a number of Sanity configuration files have been added, such as CLI and config files in the root of the project, as well as this Sanity directory here, which contains configuration files for both our front end and the studio itself. We're going to add some more files to this. So one to store all of our queries. This is Grok, which you can test out inside of the studio using the Vision plugin. These queries will be used in our application to query an index of posts for the homepage and individual posts. We can also generate TypeScript types in the terminal by first running the schema extraction command and then also running the typegen generate command. You'll need to rerun both of those when your schema and queries change, and you might like to combine them into a script in your package.json file. Now let's create a file to display posts. We need a components directory. And we also need to do a little housekeeping with our file-based routing. Because our studio and our front end live in the same application, we don't want them to share the same layout. So we need to create a pathless layout segment in this file-based routing configuration to separate the studio and the front end away from each other. In the app directory, create a directory with parentheses around it called blog. And then inside of there, we'll make a layout.tsx file. Copy in the code example here, which is going to wrap our content here as well as render the Sanity live component. And we're going to move that homepage into this blog folder. And now our homepage will perform a Sanity fetch using our Grok query and render that list of posts into this post component. And so if we go back to the homepage now, we see the new post that we published. You now have a Next.js 15 application with an embedded Sanity Studio, in which you can create and publish blog posts, and those blog posts are rendered on the home page when queried with Sanity Client. Now it's time to enable visual editing. First of all, we're going to need a viewer token to be able to view drafts. You can open Manage from the terminal by running npx sanity manage, and in Manage, go across to the API tab, go and create a new token. We'll call this Preview. Give it viewer credentials and click Save. We can now copy this into our project. Let's open up the .env.local file and paste it in under the name Sanity API read token. It's your responsibility to protect this token. The way that it's implemented in this guide means that it should not end up in the bundle of your application and should only ever be given to authorized users that are able to enter draft mode. Let's create another new utility in the Sanity lib folder to store and export this token. The Sanity Studio will handle the logic to enter draft mode, but it will be helpful for our front end to have some components to disable it at any time as well. So let's go and create a new component here called disable draft mode. And we'll update our root layout in the blog directory to render both that disable draft mode component when draft mode is enabled, and along with the visual editing component. Another change we'll need to make is to add a configuration option for stagger encoding. This allows the click to edit behavior. And from here, we can add the studio URL. You'll need to make this dynamic when you deploy the application so that it's not using your local URL. Now, over in our Sanity Live component, it's currently only able to view published content. But if we set up configuration options for the browser token, which is the token that we created earlier, and a server token, this will now allow the Sanity Fetch helper to fetch draft content when the site is in draft mode. To put the site into draft mode, we will need routes for the Sanity Studio's presentation tool to request. So within the app directory here, we'll create a new folder, API, and in that, draft-mode, and within that, enable, and within that, a route file. We should also have another route to disable draft mode. So from here, from the API directory, let's create one, disable. And lastly, we need the configuration of the presentation tool itself. So let's import the presentation tool from the Sanity package and then add it to the plugins array inside of the Sanity config configuration. We can see here the presentation tool is set to request this URL that we just created, where that route will check a secret from the presentation tool and enable draft mode when requested. Now, if we head back to our studio and open up the presentation tool, we can see that published content, but also we can click to edit any of this. And as we make changes, after a brief moment, we'll see those changes populated on the front end. This is live updating draft content in your front end application. All that's left to do now is create the rest of the blog. At the moment, we only have a post index, but we can't click into any of these posts to display them. So let's finish the job. Let's create another route to display individual posts. So here inside of our blog directory, we'll create a new folder posts, and inside of that, a directory slug with square brackets, and then page.tsx to render them. We'll also need a component to display individual posts. So down here in components, let's get posts.tsx. We can see here it's going to render our Sanity image as well as portable text. Our application already uses Tailwind, and the easiest way to style rich text with Tailwind is to use their typography plugin. In the terminal, let's install the Tailwind typography plugin, but also we're going to add legacy peer deps to avoid any installation issues. Then we can open up the Tailwind config, import the typography plugin, and add it to the plugins array. Now we should be able to disable edit mode, click into any of these posts, and we see this page where we can continue to make, let's put this title back, my new post. We can add some rich text and even upload an image. With the presentation tool installed and configured, we now have two ways of navigating content. It's best to be able to add links between our presentation view and our structure view, and we can do this by resolving locations in the presentation tool configuration. Let's create another helper file here inside of the Sanity directory. Inside of a folder called presentation, we'll call it resolve.ts, and export this configuration, which for every post document is going to add a link to the homepage and the individual post page. Now back in our Sanity config, in the presentation tool configuration, we can add this resolve option and import this from our Sanity folder. Now we can see the locations of where this post is used throughout the application. And we can even jump back to that document in the structure view. Now you have a Next.js application with live content, and authors have the confidence to press publish, being able to view those changes before they go live. If you have any questions, reach out in the Slack community or send your feedback on this guide. Thanks.